and welcome to another episode of Relationships with DAP. We are the Community Education and Outreach Team for the Domestic Abuse Project of Delaware County, also known as DAP. I am Nicole Powell, the Community Education Manager,
Hi, everyone. My name is Veronika Lynch, and I am the Outreach Awareness Specialist.
and we will be your hosts today as we learn and talk about the Netflix film Malcolm and Marie.
Yes.
It's
Time
time
to
to
get.
get real. We're going to get it together one day.
We'll do a countdown next time, a silent
Yeah,
countdown.
it was perfect. I don't care what anybody says. So again, we are discussing a film on Netflix that premiered around Valentine's Day,
Mhm.
and it's in my opinion, a perfect anti-Valentine's Day
Right.
watch. And so it kind of goes through a couple and a very eventful evening. How would you describe it in general?
Tiring, exhausting.
Tiring, exhausting. Yeah. It literally is a hit or miss,
Right. It's
depending
very
on
polarizing.
very. If you're into cinematography, I would
Mhm.
definitely watch it. There's a lot to pick and pull out of it. However, we are going to pick and pull a lot of the unhealthy
Right.
dynamics that we hear and see in that hour and 45 minutes, excuse me, of back and forth. Amazing writing, again, amazing cinematography, if that's your thing, and it is our thing.
Yeah.
So we enjoyed it, and then rewatching it was a different beast.
Right.
Would you say? Yeah.
Well, it's almost written like the way I saw it was almost written like a play with, like we
Yeah.
said, like monologues and back and forth. And then there isn't really a lot of pauses. Like the camera follows them the whole time. So it's very much like I got the feeling that was like a play.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. You have more of a theater background than I do. I think I took a 130 class. And I did fall in love with it. So, but it's very theatrical. So again, if you're into it, you'll like it. If
Right.
not, you might have different opinions, and that's okay. But we are going to really dig a lot deeper into the overall theme that
Mhm.
is definitely prevalent throughout the entire movie is communication.
Right. This is an example of how not to communicate with your partner, presented by Zendaya.
Absolutely. I mean, the communication in this, and I can't even say it's completely horrible because the fact that they are communicating is kind of dope,
Right.
but the way in which they do it is so complex.
Yeah, everything is through like metaphors and almost, it's so to get one point across takes someone 10 minutes. Like you really could have said this outright. So I guess like the first example of communication or lack thereof is the minute the movie starts, you see like two different vibes going.
Mhm.
Malcolm's extremely happy. He had a successful night. He's like really riding high. He's feeling good. He's making a drink, playing music. And Marie is like immediately shut down. She goes to the bathroom and you can see that she's annoyed that he's like playing music on, like she doesn't want to talk to him and he's calling for her and she's not, asking like what he's saying. She's like, I can't hear you. So automatically we see that there's a lack of reading your partner and being able to
Yes.
sense how they feel by like body language and things like that because they're in two different worlds almost.
Yeah, something we did not plan to discuss, but I want to kind of touch on too. The fact that music was a low key, um, beyond background noise,
Right.
it was very, like, I think they purposely and methodically chose songs that were telling in that moment.
Right. Absolutely. It set the tone from the beginning. And it's specifically, it's jazz and it's black and white film. So we're like kind of giving it back to like this era of romance. And then while something very unromantic is happening.
Absolutely. And it's funny because whomever chooses the song, like they're really into it, and the other person is like, I hate you right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like,
Definitely.
why don't you just tell me how you feel instead of playing a song that's
Yeah.
telling me how you feel?
Very middle school esque. That's what middle schoolers, they'll send me like, listen to this and you'll know. I'll
The
be like, just
subliminal
say it.
messages. Yeah.
Yeah.
But again, back to the communication. Literally, the first thing that they discuss is the lack of de escalation
Mm-hmm.
that Malcolm has when they communicate, which kind of also makes Marie feel that she has to hold back on how she feels. And he's like, nah, what's up? And she's like, oh, I'm fine. You're not fine. No, I'm
Mm-hmm.
fine. You know, that typical asking your partner, how you doing? I'm fine. Are you sure? Yep.
It's like, oh, you
And
just chop that butter in half very aggressively. I would say you're kind of angry.
I was disturbed and really curious about where that knife was going to go.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And then, right, there's the whole point of her not bringing up how she feels and being mad about something and saying, when she's saying she's not mad, when this was, so we know she's mad because he doesn't thank her in his acceptance speech or the premiere speech, you know, thanking everyone who's a part of the film. And he left her out of
Mm-hmm.
that thank you. And even at the event, it was like brought up that he said he was sorry. As soon as it was done, he said, I'm so sorry about it. And she kept saying, like, it's no problem. Don't worry about it. And it wasn't until other people were telling her that she should be upset about it or being like backhanded about being upset about it, did she actually get upset. And then she won't tell him that she's upset until he asks a million times. So there's like this where, what are your true feelings with this?
Mm-hmm. And I mean, if it were me, I'd probably be upset too. However, it's
Right.
not, but we're going to talk about why she is upset. And what I will say I appreciate about the first and opening scene is the fact that she generally did want to put it aside for the
Right.
moment. She was like, this is not the time.
Mm-hmm.
Let's continue to celebrate you, and we will talk about this later because I know you, I know us, and this is not going to go well if you continue
Yeah.
to push it. So she genuinely did try to essentially de-escalate the conversation to avoid arguing,
Mm-hmm.
and he just kept pushing. And granted, she should have been open, but I do also respect her knowing that they would need time to step back, reevaluate, and then
Of course.
readdress this conversation.
Like it said, it's 1 a.m. They've had drinks or he's had drinks. I don't know if we never see her drink throughout the movie because she's clean. So we just see him drinking. And so it's like, how can you have a productive conversation when your emotions are heightened because of the stress of the event? And like now you're running on adrenaline because it did go well. And now you're tired. You've
Mm-hmm.
been drinking. He didn't eat that whole night. So we don't know if he's drunk by this point. So yeah, you have, but that's a clear example of him also not listening to her because she
Right.
says, I don't want to. And he continues to push it and say,
Right.
like, no, we have to do it now. We have to do it now. So he's not, even if they do have the conversation, he's setting the tone that it doesn't matter what she says. It's about what he wants.
Right. Making him very dominant in
Mm-hmm.
this scenario. And that opening scene, one of the with that mac and cheese will forever be ingrained. And everyone's like, but you're eating mac and cheese. Right.
Right.
He
Right.
kept saying that. And in that moment, she's like, are you really trying to argue with me while you're eating mac and cheese? You know, like I need you to have a better experience and scenario than this
Yeah.
situation. But if you want to go there, let's go there. And she then indeed proceeds to say, why are you abusing me? Like, you're abusing me in this moment. He was like, abusing you. In other
Right.
words, I'm not touching you. I'm not physically laying my hand on you. Therefore, I am not abusing you.
Right.
But in that same token, in that same moment, she says, you are verbally abusing me.
Right.
He said, well, I need you to clarify that because that wasn't clear. And I think in that moment, he knew that he was probably being verbally abusive, but did not care.
Oh, I think it's like sarcastic to be like, oh, great. Thank you. Thanks for telling me. Because we just watched him spend at least 45 seconds of just calling her crazy. He says she's delusional, that she's completely overreacting. She's like the craziest woman he's ever met. He spent all this time like minimizing her and telling her that she's completely overreacting while eating, like we said, the mac and cheese that she made for him at 1 a.m. after an hours long of an event.
Right. Like, just, I feel like the emotional distress for both of them at
Mm-hmm.
this point is just tiring and draining. And it's like, I think everybody just wants to go to bed. Right. And she did, she's
Right.
like, can we just eat and go to sleep, please?
Mm-hmm.
Please. Please. and he's just not having it. But I appreciate you also mentioning the minimizing, deny, and blame things. I think they do that throughout, in
Oh
addition
yeah.
to other forms of power and control. So we have the verbal power and control, which is seen throughout. So the belittling, the name
Mhm.
calling, like you just mentioned, um, the minimize, deny that this is even happening, and blaming
Mhm.
each other throughout the entire film.
Right.
It's like just you're not gonna let it go. You're not gonna let it go. Okay, and I mean, it starts off pretty like concrete. Okay, this is definitely verbal power and control. However, I don't know about you, but I feel like there was also a lot of sexual power and control here
Mhm.
that also played into like the cycle of
Yeah.
abuse that took place. Because first they'll start off like lovey dovey, again, like they start off on a high,
Mhm.
right? And then you're expecting them, okay, well, a high then leads to some form of intimacy in which they were going that direction. And then he realized she wasn't in a good mood.
Right.
And so they stop. And again, they argue, and then they kiss. And he asks her, "Can I kiss you?" And she's like, "I don't know." You know,
Yeah.
so right now she has this power over him sexually.
Mhm.
And then, the roles then continue through that cycle of, okay, now we're in a good space. We stop. We think about what was just said. We're going back at it again.
Right, and you can tell that she has a lot of sexual power because it kind of seems like that's what he sees her for. Right? I mean, it's
Mm,
clearly not I didn't see anything about him loving her because like well we see like he loves her because she is so beautiful and crazy and then sometimes he's like I can't stand you. But, they made the comment of someone made a joke about her being a model and then when she brought up the co-star and him thinking or the lead in his film Taylor, his first response was like, "Well, I'm not cheating on you with her." And so, like, it seems as though her, role is to be the sexy one. She's younger, she's beautiful, but she doesn't have any other attributes that people are looking to her for, like
right.
success or anything like that. And then, later there was a comment made that she didn't want to have sex for like 6 months because she was on antidepressants.
Mm-hmm.
And so she couldn't have sex. So it kind of seems as though there's always this him wanting her in that way and her not giving it to him.
That's interesting because even again, one of their moments of escalation
Mhm.
is her calling him needy.
Yeah.
And he's like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "You're so needy, but you're also the least jealous man ever."
Mhm.
And I think it kind of goes to show too how common I think that is in just in relationships in general, where people want their partner to be jealous
Mhm.
and also somewhat needy,
Right.
and then chastise them for being that way. Or
Mhm.
they also enjoy just simply being combative.
Mhm. Right. I definitely think they like arguing a little bit
Uh,
because
if they
if
did,
it were me, I'd be like, I'm gonna go in the room. I'm sleeping in a different bed. After I made you mac and cheese and you yelled at me from across the house, I think this conversation is done. I'm not gonna do any more because there's no point. But they, in my mind, spent 8 hours arguing. This movie feels so long too, for just monologues on monologues on monologues, on why the other person is so flawed and horrible.
yeah.
So,
I mean, it's legit a tit for tat the entire way. And again, something that we try to convey in our conversations out in the community is that sometimes it's not just one person who is quote unquote abusive
mhm.
or unhealthy or toxic. You can legitimately have two unhealthy people come together to make one just toxic, incompatible
Right.
relationship. Unfortunately, it works for them.
Yeah.
But how does that impact the people around them, if at all? And does it matter? We don't know. That's up to you to debate.
And I think the setting of their house, like this is not something we were going to talk about, but I think that plays into like the cinematography and everything. They're all alone out there. So it
That's
kind of
true.
seems like, and we said this before with like dependency, like, and we're gonna bring this up later too, but they're literally all the other person has. They're alone in this house, this huge house. They're and like nobody, they have no neighbors or anything like that. They're surrounded by just like trees, which is it's a beautiful place, but they are alone. So
Yeah.
then when he's not in the home, when he's working on his film, she's all by herself. And then we see when she goes outside to pee and she talks about having the novelty of a backyard, he is searching all over for her, looking for her, seeing where she went. And he, that's that comment of like, you are the neediest person because he can't stand to be alone.
Mm, that's deep. I wasn't ready to go there. But
That's where we went.
yeah,
Okay. It's
we're
time to
there.
get real.
We're there.
So
Come on, time to get real. Yes. Yeah, I think they're very dependent upon each other. They're very each of them are needy in their own right. And like you said, it's a matter of, throwing it in each other's face too.
Mhm.
For whatever reason, in each of their monologues throughout the film is they're constantly reminding each other of what they've done for the other.
Right.
Like, if it weren't for me, you wouldn't have this. And for Marie, it's if you didn't have me in your life, you wouldn't have a film.
Mhm.
You wouldn't have a vision for the film. You would not have any foundation. You wouldn't be able to come up with this content by yourself had you not been
Mhm.
in my life, or had I not been in your life, actually.
Yeah.
Right. And he's like, well, you also would still be addicted to drugs and
Mhm.
alcohol if it weren't for me either.
Yeah.
And so it's like, so again, like, how long are you going to keep throwing this in my face? And how does that play a role in their emotional and mental and, again, verbal power and control behaviors?
Right. And he even says that if he's worried that if he ever leaves her, that she'll immediately start doing drugs again too. So like there is that sense of like, I don't know, guilt, or he's just like making her feel guilty. And that was a theme of like the guilt and shame that he said he could
Hmm.
write about. She was like, well, that is my guilt and shame. Like, what do you know about that? But I think it plays a huge part in the power and control because they do feel indebted in some way to each other. So you're more likely to, I don't want to say use the word allow, but you're more likely to like look past these behaviors because you do feel as if, oh, they're right. That I owe this to them, so I guess I have to take this, or they should feel like this because I owe them these things. So you're less likely to like stand up for yourself and set that boundary of no, okay, what you did was nice, right? It was a great thing. He paid for her rehab. He was there for her, but that doesn't mean that you can use that experience against her later on. The whole point of getting clean is about forgiveness. So where do we forgive each other? And how do we
Right.
move forward?
Yes, I love the way you said that. And I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong, but did they ever say like you're right or you're wrong? I think at one
The
point
very end.
she made him say like you're right. I would not
Yeah.
have this movie without you. But did she ever say you're right? I wouldn't have gotten through my addiction.
No, at the end, he just says, well, she's like, I don't want you to take me for granted. And so then, and then right before they go to sleep, he's like, well, I'm sorry. And she's like, and he's like, I'm sorry and thank you. And she's like, you're welcome. And that's like where the argument stops. And then they go to bed. And then there's the next day of them standing outside together.
And hopefully not arguing anymore for like another year.
Seriously.
Whew.
Seriously.
No, but I mean, again, like going back to that dependency, um, I think a lot of what we also try to get across to community members
Mm-hmm.
is is that quote unquote like forbidden question, like why do you stay?
Mm-hmm.
And then we do that safety planning conversation. Like there's a myriad of reasons why people are not so um rushed to leave
Mm-hmm.
what we deem to be an unhealthy relationship and something they may not deem to be unhealthy. Um, Again, outside of the verbal abuse comment that Marie mentioned and stated to Malcolm,
Mm-hmm.
do you think they would consider their relationship to be unhealthy or toxic?
Would they?
Yeah.
I don't. I think they're just that they've just. This is what they have now. And she says that she's like, this is the best of you I'm going to ever get and the worst of you I'm ever going to get. You don't think there's any growth that needs to happen. But again, she also makes the comment, you do these things because you know you're going to come home and I'm still going to be here.
Right.
So it seems as though they have just accepted that this is the relationship that they're going to have.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if they think it's healthy or unhealthy, or if this is it.
You just said a lot. Because I think that's how a lot of
Yeah.
people we work with think and operate. Like, this is it. Like, and I think at some point too, it is ingrained in them that they can't find better, or that they won't find better, or this is just their normal. This is what works for them. And especially with the students we work with, like middle and high schoolers,
Right.
who have not only witnessed these kind of behaviors and take it on as, okay, this is how you show love and affection. This is what relationships are supposed to look and feel like, and also sound like.
Mm-hmm.
Anything outside of that is like probably a miss. Like, why don't you love me? Like, there's no way you can love me because you don't argue with me. In fact, I've heard someone
Mm-hmm.
say that you must not
Right.
love me because you don't argue or go back and forth with me.
Right.
Hmm. That's
And she even makes the comment that he's the first man to show her that she was worth feeling good. Or, she said that you're the first person to like show me like what it is like to be in a relationship like this. So that also sets the tone. And, we see it's mentioned a couple of times. She was 20 years old when they met. And
mm-hmm.
I believe he's older. I don't know how much older.
Mm-hmm.
Um, she's addicted to drugs
Mm-hmm.
and she has never been in a healthy relationship. So from the beginning, there's these dynamics of having to rely on him and learn from him. So he gets to set the tone of this is what the relationship's going to look like. And she kind of has to go along with it because she doesn't have that
Sure.
experience to decide otherwise. And so, and I think did they say how long they were together in the movie?
Not to my knowledge. It can't be that long though. Maybe we'll just say maybe 2 years. We'll
Right.
just guesstimate.
Right.
But even with her saying that he was the first to make her feel good, or probably the first to really help her understand what, I guess, an adult or mature relationship would look or feel like,
Mm-hmm.
he says the complete opposite to literally tear her apart, which is unfortunately one of the most pivotal scenes for
Right.
me. When he sits there while she is soaking in a bathtub, supposed to be relaxing,
Mm-hmm.
right? And he just goes down the list of all the women he's been with before her to make herself feel less than, to invalidate how she feels,
Mm-hmm.
to also let her know that no, she was not the sole vision of this creativity that has come together into this premiere that we've done this evening, that you were not the first broken girl I've been with.
Mm-hmm. I would just sink into the tub and be like, maybe it's time for me to drown. And I'd be like, this is ridiculous.
She did pull one of my statements. I'm like, are you done?
Yeah,
She did that. She's like, are you finished? She was like, no, I'm not.
because he's reminding her too that you're just like everyone else. There's nothing special about you, right?
Mm,
His other girlfriend was, I guess he alludes to her being on heroin. And then, him finding her and thinking that she loves her hour-long showers and finding her in the bathroom with like a needle in her arm. So they're
right.
also using graphic explanations of how to remind her of what her addiction looked like, right? How
Mm-hmm.
it makes you look gross, kind of. So not only making her feel insignificant for her own experiences, but also reminding her that those were bad. And you're lucky that I was with you anyway during that time.
Yeah, and I think with anyone in a relationship, you want to feel special. You want your
Mm-hmm.
relationship to be unique to the two of you. And he pretty much says to her, that's not the case here. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I was talking about my bike ride in Brooklyn with my ex and not our bike ride in Barcelona.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you also have the question, okay, so what is he seeking in relationships? Because
Mm-hmm.
if this is the pattern of people that he's been with, three women with addiction issues to me would be, a red flag. You don't really just, addiction is a very large problem, but it's not something that I would assume like multiple of your partners have dealt with,
Right.
so he's clearly seeking something. And to me, it is the power and control to be the good one, the one who has their stuff together, and therefore he's like superior and has to help, and so that people feel indebted. But then he
Right.
gets to use their experiences and gain from them, right? Gain
Hmm.
recognition, and now he gets money from his movie premiering. Now he's getting praise for the political statements that he's making and that he says are not political,
Yeah, and
but
I
they're
think
not
that's
his experiences either.
right.
So he's taking, and she says, like, you stole my voice for this.
Mm. And that's again, unfortunately, very common where we have a lot of victims and survivors who do feel
Mhm.
like that their voice has been stolen, and it's really hard for them to therefore, not only speak up and speak out about their experience, but also to seek services, right?
Right. Yeah.
Because I mean, and like you said, it says a lot about him for him needing or seeking and wanting to be in those kinds of relationships where he is seen as superior, which is what, again, another form of power control. We would kind of break down like, social status or
Hmm.
privilege.
Privilege is huge in this. Huge.
It's
Because she calls him
major.
out on his, and the fact that I think we see it in a couple of different ways. The fact that he says that his film is not political. And then she retorts with, like, well, Angela Davis would disagree with you. That he's saying, like, just because it is a Black woman who is dealing with addiction, it's not a political statement. And she's like, well, Angela Davis would disagree. Also, he's not a Black woman dealing with addiction. So who is he to say what's political and what isn't? And then, they have like the difference of how they're raised. And that gets brought up. And
Hmm.
that's an argument that, he's in a two-parent household, which is a huge privilege. His
Yeah.
parents are well off. They're successful in their careers. His mom's a therapist. His dad's a professor. So these are people who are articulate, right? They help teach like emotional intelligence. That's the tone that is set. And then therefore she has to look to him for guidance because he has these skills.
Yeah. And I think, of course, for other relationships and different relationships, it can privilege and social status can look a myriad of ways.
Mm-hmm.
It could be financial, it could be
Right.
education, it can be even how you identify along the gender spectrum, if at all,
Mm-hmm.
right? How you identify sexually, even in race. And I think race and politics is maybe one thing they connect on throughout this whole
Mm-hmm.
thing and try and kind of seemingly bond over. But otherwise, again, it's all this back and forth, this tit for tat. Well, you're wrong, I'm right. Or again, I can't fault them for actually having these tough conversations. It's just how you do it is
Right.
the big issue.
Mm-hmm.
And, kind of reframing how you communicate with your partner or with anyone you're in a relationship, whether it be personal or professional or intimate,
Yeah.
and how do you move past it, right? Because it just seemed like they were never going to move past it.
Well, let's also think about the scene that stood out the most to me, where I literally was like, "Are you kidding me?" Is when after, he talks about not casting her, they have that conversation. Then she decides to prove to him why he should have cast her
She
by
was
grabbing a
good.
knife.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I literally was like, she's going to kill him. This film took a turn I wasn't expecting. And then she's like, "How's that for authenticity?" I'm like, maybe there are other ways. We could have done that. That to me is the biggest sign of why? Why would you do that to your partner? Make them think that you're off your antidepressants, that you're seeking pills again, you're taking a knife, you don't know what you're going to do with it, you're going to cut yourself, you're going to kill me. I was like, that I'd be like, please, I need to go home. That's too much.
Yes. It's a
Yeah.
lot. And I just feel like the emotions are so strong and legitimately
Right.
overwhelming. I personally would not want to sit there in that moment and contemplate how I can counter argue your statements or one
Mhm.
specific statement I want to focus on and then bring myself to tears. That's just draining.
Yeah. Well, then I guess she can think back on to this is also after the tub where he tells her too that she loves to be degraded and humiliated. And then that's why she's so messed up, right? That's why she's so broken is because this is what she wants. So right, he's blaming her for what he is saying because she wants to hear it, right? And I feel like we've all had moments where we ask our partner things that we don't really want to know, but you just have to ask. You're like, I know it's going to hurt me, but I need to hear it.
Yes.
And then he responds by being like, okay, so however you feel now is your fault. So I think she also has a lot to pull from in that scene. And let me just think back on to the last, 20 minutes of my life where this man yelled at me while I'm trying to soak in the tub. But she's also doing it as a power move, right? To make him feel dumb. And he says that. He's like, you just want me to think for the rest of my life that my film will never be as good as it could have been.
Listen, I don't care what anyone says. The both of them really do pull their weight in terms of
Mm-hmm.
power and control dynamics. I mean,
Definitely.
equally pull their weight. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I can't even say one, literally, I'm like keeping score the whole time. Like, dang, they're really going for it. Like,
You're
one
like,
for you, two for
okay, wow.
legit. It's like, he's like, oh, that hurt. Oh, oh,
Mhm.
like really just like
Yeah.
jab, jab, punch, uppercut. It's like,
Right. Right.
and I mean, again, kudos to even having the talk, right? You're talking. You want you to communicate. However,
Mm-hmm.
you gonna just cuss each other out the whole time? Like,
Right.
like
This
softer
is where
blows.
boundaries come
Right.
in, right? Here are things that we don't bring up in the
Right.
future. If I tell you something in private, don't weaponize that. This is when, we have communication. Okay, so we have some foundation of it. You feel comfortable enough to express your feelings, no matter how horrible they may be. You feel empowered enough to share that. Like we said, how are we sharing it? What are we sharing? And what's the goal of sharing these things? Because it
Right.
doesn't seem like that was, I guess, like to be the writing style of it. But what is the intention of this whole argument? To make someone feel bad or to get them to say thank you? Like, what did you actually want? What were you trying to achieve?
Literally.
Because
Like, what's
I'd be
the
like,
point?
you told me about your exes for
For
what?
what?
Okay. You want me to sleep with you after that? Not gonna work. No, I know. It's like I can get why she doesn't want to, but
And then something just happens where they end up, just lovey-dovey all over again. Again, they're
mm-hmm,
in their honeymoon phase, right? And
mm-hmm,
as soon as the honeymoon phase ceases, it's
mm-hmm.
like, I think as the audience and the viewers, we're walking on eggshells like, okay, when is it about to pop off again?
Yeah, because you're like, where else could this movie go?
Where
What else could they have to be mad about? And then they find something.
something.
Because you also find out that, like I said before, that she had cheated on him at some point, right?
Mhm.
Before she went to rehab, she cheated on him. And so it seems as though after rehab and after she's clean, once she no longer has an experience to give to him, there's no sex now either.
Mhm.
So that's where we see like the power control really take place there. And she's beautiful. I mean, she's a gorgeous woman. So like there is an inherent sexuality about her too. And the dress that she's wearing is gorgeous. It's like well fitted. And then we see her in her tank top and underwear. Like she's always looking like sexy in the film.
Mhm.
So like they're trying to have this like parallel of this is a beautiful, gorgeous woman. You do see sexuality in her, but it doesn't seem as though she necessarily wants that or
No.
like wants to express that. And you see
Mm-mm.
that a lot in the tub too, where she takes her eyelashes off, she takes her makeup off, like she's like being vulnerable, right? She's in the tub naked, so you really see that come to head.
Yeah, that natural beauty, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm not even sure he appreciates it. And then, like you
No,
said, I'm not even sure she wants him to a certain
right?
degree. It's really weird. But again, that's part of the reason why I think I actually enjoy this, because you just don't know. It leaves you guessing. It definitely leaves a lot of questions unanswered, and it also brings about
Mm-hmm.
more questions that you can ask and kind of dig deeper into. And it just gives you, again, ways of things of what not to do.
Yeah, yeah. Perfect movie on what not to do.
Like all the red flags you can think of in verbal abuse, right here.
Mm-hmm.
The belittling, the minimize, the deny, the blaming. Gaslighting is an understatement, I feel like, in this moment.
Seriously, yeah,
Like they have nothing on like no, gaslighting has nothing on them.
right. And then
Cause
she makes a comment right at some point. I can't remember exactly what she says. Um, But Marie mentions that like love because she loves him that once he knows that somebody loves him and like needs him, he never thinks about them again because he knows that they'll
Yes.
always be there, which I do believe is a form of power and control too.
Yeah.
To make you feel as if your love isn't valued.
Yeah. I think that's more common than people would often like to think or
Mm.
admit or maybe be aware of.
Mhm.
Because again, that idea of you maybe being unlovable,
Mhm.
um, and how this person is loving you. Again, this is her first relationship where she's seen what this looks like. And for him, he's like, been there, done that, can write a book next.
Right. Right.
And it's
Right.
like, dang, just
Yeah.
stab me in my heart, why don't you?
Yeah. Yeah, again, like reinforcing that she's not unique. The feelings that she has shown him are not unique or special or not like valued.
Right. I was about to say
Yeah.
valued is what comes out. And
Mhm.
I'm not really sure she even assures him that he's valuable either.
Oh, no. Yeah. I mean, if you think of what he has provided, right? That the home that they're in. If it
The
wasn't for the
home.
film that he's making, they wouldn't have where they're staying. She isn't necessarily a successful actress. She was cast as like background people. So it's like their money and everything. And um just how I guess their careers kind of because without him making the film, what would she have been cast in? I mean, it is her experience and everything. But yeah, so it's weird. It's different.
Yeah, and I mean, one thing that he does that I as a woman makes me hurt is the
Mm,
constant comparisons that he does because she has not had a successful acting career.
right.
She's like, "Why did you not cast me? Like, if it's about me, I'm the perfect person to
Exactly.
star to make this film not only great but greater than what it has been or what it is right now
Mhm.
because it's my story. Like if it's my
Mhm.
story, I can easily depict this and if not better and make it even more relatable and
Mhm.
authentic, right? And the fact that he just is like, but you're not Taylor or you're
Right.
not these other women who I've been with. Like you're not, again, you're not special, you're not valuable. You're just someone, you're just another person.
Yeah. Yeah. And you think back to the comment, well, I didn't cheat on you with her. You're like, well, I did. But and then she's like, well, I didn't ask. And he's like, well, I
Right.
didn't. Like, but that's not what I asked.
I
So again, like you said, the comparison to other women, I'd be like, well, I'm not Taylor. Exactly. I'm me. So what role does Veronica, bring to this?
Right. And he not constantly, but I know in the beginning he says, well, Taylor can tell you don't like her.
Right. Yeah. She's insecure about that. And she's like, okay. That's how I'd be too. I'd be like, and is Taylor here
Oh,
right now?
right.
I don't care.
And why should I? Like, why should I care how Taylor feels in my presence or how I make Taylor feel?
Yeah. Right. And he's like, well,
And
she
why
can
do you
see you.
care?
Yeah. Right. And she's like, she sees you being like nice to other people. And she's like, well, I just don't really have a lot to say to her, which is okay too. I think that's something that as adults, we're allowed to not like people and people are allowed to not like you. I think people get really hung up on that,
That is so
that they
true.
like whenever someone finds out that someone doesn't like them, there's a lot of hurt. It's like, okay, we're adults. People are allowed to not like you and you're going to not like everyone. And you don't have to be best friends with everyone. That's how I feel. Especially because if I'm like talking about me not liking people, then if you're like, I don't want to be like, I'm like, hey, okay, that's okay. I know people don't like me either.
And I mean, if you liked everyone and if everyone liked you, I think that would just be overwhelming too, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Even
Definitely
I do
weird.
think we're
That was a
both likable
tangent where,
people. It
yeah.
was. But that was. It's okay.
I
But
had to.
no, and I think again, I think this goes without saying again, again, again. I'll say it again
Mhm.
though. Like, communication is key.
Right.
And will relationships have like conflict? 100%. But we also like to emphasize healthy conflict.
Mhm.
Right. There's a way to communicate. There's a way to have conflict. There's a way to resolve issues. There's a way to argue. You
Mhm.
can argue and not raise a voice. You can have a disagreement. You can have a debate. I think if you put anger and arguing together, it's automatically red flags. But again, if you
Right.
have like healthy conversations, healthy debates, healthy conflicts, if you have de escalation tactics, if you are able to step away and come back, I am a firm believer, like, okay, listen, we can have this conversation. If I think about it later, be like, oh yeah, I try not to bring other things up. I would hope people don't keep bringing things up, but I would
Yeah.
want you to really say everything you need to say. Write a notepad. Like I know I have like girlfriend. She's like, I get around him and it makes me feel so dumb. Like, yeah, that does make that. Like, I can see how that could make you feel, and you kind of like forget everything you want to say. Girl, write it down. You get a
Right.
notepad. Say
Absolutely.
this, and this, and then have a rebuttal. Is it easy in the moment? Not always, but I definitely
Right.
even like in professional settings, I don't want to walk away from a conversation with things left unsaid, and then I'm unsettled. I need to be settled, and they definitely said everything they needed to say. They got everything off their chest.
Yeah, I was gonna say too. This is personal experience, but I don't know if I definitely have confidence, but I would forget everything that has bothered me. And like, I'm definitely a person who, when I get angry, I do get angry, and I'm trying to be like, if someone's like, well, I don't want to talk about this right now, I'll be like, well, I do. So I don't know if you want to hear it, but I'm going to say it. And I try like not to do that because I don't want to be the person where I'm like, a day later, I'm texting them and be like, well, I didn't say XYZ in the argument yesterday, but I've been thinking about it all day, trying to you want to talk it out. And I guess this also goes back to like the setting of the movie. There's no other opportunity to talk about it but right then and there.
Right.
Because they are the only people. They're not going to go out hang out with their friends the next day, get drinks with like their girlfriends, and then they're like, "You should say this."
Right.
Tell them how it is, and then you go back and you're like, "Well, my girlfriend said I should say this." They have to do it right then and there because that's the only person they're going to see.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I think I guess as we kind of like conclude the conversation, like our as odd as it sounds, like even our hotline, I'm sure we could call like, this is what happened. How do I talk to my partner about what they said? I don't know. How do you communicate with them?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I think and I think, when in doubt, feel free, to reach out to. So I don't think it's a bad idea to get a second opinion. Just kind of be careful and ultimately just be reflective.
Absolutely. Constant, like looking back and seeing also being able to acknowledge when your behavior was wrong.
Absolutely.
Because I think we talked about this. He does say, I'm sorry, and he thanks her at the end. But what she did throughout the film was not okay either. And we never see her acknowledge her behavior.
I agree.
And we're allowed to say, that was a mistake. I don't want to raise my voice at you. I'm sorry I did. I don't, and then take active steps to fix that. Because again, unless we're working to fix those things, that just feeds into the cycle of abuse more.
Right. And I agree. He's like, I shouldn't have said that. That was wrong. I didn't mean it. Because you do say things in the heat of the moment. I get it. And sometimes once you say something, it's really hard to take it back. But he definitely says, I shouldn't have said that. My fault. I didn't mean it. But she never does that. And I think that is a part of the self-reflection in general. Like, you know what? You're right. Especially if someone comes to you to say, you made me feel this way. And, I'm sorry. That was not my intention. I know better for next time. Again, like hitting below the belt, bringing up like passing, like addiction, which is a no-go. Like under any circumstances, I would like addiction of all things would not be something you want to throw into someone's face.
Absolutely not.
So how can we support people around this?
After watching it, or just if we're experiencing these things?
If we're experiencing it, because I'm sure it's more common than not.
Right. I mean, I always encourage people to reach out. Like we said, we're always willing to just go over these things with you. If you are unsure of what you're experiencing, you can always give our hotline a call. Like that number is 610-565-4590. But you can always like we said, like if you're calling like, hey, we had this argument, I don't really know how to feel. You don't have to be an ultimate crisis to call us. We're always here to talk things out. And if we can't answer the question, we can point you in a direction to a resource that hopefully can.
Yeah.
So, that's what I would suggest. If you don't have access to calling a hotline, hopefully you have a support system around you that you can kind of debrief with and go over with. Either that's if you are in a relationship and this is a relationship you want to stay in, then maybe seeking counseling.
Yeah.
Couple counseling, at least you have like a third party objective person who can break down and call you out where you went wrong and, and provide actual steps on how to be better. And like, not necessarily like a treatment plan, but an action plan in that way. Those are things that I would suggest because they do stay together and that happens.
Yeah. So, it's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
We just hope they learn and grow from that experience.
So if that's a relationship you want to stay in, we have to put in the work to make it healthy and to feel good.
Come on, put in work. Yes. Yeah, so I think this was an amazing conversation. We definitely encourage you all to watch and check out Malcolm and Marie on Netflix if you haven't already done so. I'm sure we have spoiled just about everything. However, we definitely encourage you again to look at it and judge for yourself. Again, it really is a hit or miss. We're not going to guarantee that you're going to like it because you just might not.
Right.
And again, if you're into just great, new, raw, and rare, you know,
Yeah.
films, this is it. And hopefully you're able to kind of digest everything we've said and apply a little bit of it to the conversations you have, not just with partners, but also like with family members, friends, and colleagues, things like that. Because again, communication is key. It's just how you do it,
Right. Absolutely.
and when and where.
Yeah.
All right, and so again, thank you for joining us for another episode of Relationships with Dap. Catch us again in a couple of weeks. We'll be discussing transgender individuals and their accessibility of services or barriers of accessing services to domestic violence and getting support around that. And we encourage you to follow us and subscribe at DAP Delco on all social media platforms, or check out our website for more information as it relates to our services and the details that we are able to provide to the Delaware County community, and anyone else who needs support.
And please, don't forget, like I already mentioned, you can always reach us at our 24/7 hotline. That number again is 610-565-4590. We are 24/7. We'll always be here to help you. And
Absolutely.
thank you so much.
Yep. And don't forget to keep it real.
To keep it real.
Yeah.
Yeah.